Deal number 4. Here we go. Practice makes perfect. Home run, hat trick, hole in one, 100-yard run back, and game-winning shot from half court. You'll see why I called it that. By the way, notice that was May 2007. Deal 4 in a little over beginning of May, so a little over 5 months, a little less than 5 months. Deal 4, value added. One of the common denominators you may have noticed is that there's several value added opportunities that David G gets involved with. And David G is moving into intermediate area of self-directed IRA investing with this purchase. To a large extent on the last purchase, and this one is even further. David G is an active ABP practitioner and found this house from a personal referral that he cultivated. So he's out there talking to people, letting them know what they do, what he does, what he's looking for. You know, I buy real estate, I borrow money, whatever the case may be. He's letting people know what he does. And we often overlook the simplest steps, and letting people know what we do is painless and nicely. It doesn't cost anything except a business card, and even that doesn't necessarily need to be done. Just tell them what you do and give them your phone number on a sheet of paper. If you have noticed in all previous deals, David G had his Roth IRA purchase assets, or what I call value-added opportunities. That's his term, my term, and I think you're either familiar with that or you should become familiar with that in the real estate business. A value-added opportunity is something that doesn't rely on inflation, appreciation, or anything else. It's the way to great wealth in real estate is to buy right? Still buying right will only get you so far. By investing in value-added properties, you will, to a large extent, control your own appreciation. And the way that works is you can raise rents. You can, in this case, do lot splits and sell off the additional lots. You can update the property. You can add rooms or room additions. Anything to improve or reposition the property, whether it's a single-family dwelling to apartment buildings, it doesn't matter. It's all the same fundamentals. That's the nice thing about the real estate business. There are deviations to what you need to do and need to learn, but the reality is everything's fundamentals. And the fundamentals are in this presentation. And you will get lots of that through your local investment club, as we've already discussed. In the previous deals, each of these has similar value-added features. And as I mentioned, David is a big believer in value-added strategy. The ironic thing is he does it just knowing that it's got extra lots. So it's pretty good strategy. All successful investors know there are critical steps are necessary to win at investing. Prospect for a good deal. Once again, follow up. Do your homework. And the most overlooked function, I put this in there, and like I say, don't be offended, but believe it or not, many investors don't make offers. They look at property, and they get hung up on the question, why should the seller accept this offer amount? As investors, we're not trained to read minds or do psychoanalysis of the seller. David G knows this key to success is making an offer he can live with. And that's the bottom line. You can look at the property, you can talk to the seller, you can analyze the seller, or you can look at the offer, look at the property, determine what you can do with this particular property, make the offer that is appropriate for this situation, whether it's a flip, a hold, or whatever you guys decide to invest in. Make the offer. The nice thing about making an offer is two things. Number one, they could accept it. If they reject it, it's likely that they'll tell you what they want for the property. And if it's an outright rejection, they do not eat you and they do not kill you. They just reject your offer. That's it. And you move on to the next one. You may have missed the most important part of this deal. David G made an offer and the seller accepted. purchase price on this particular property was $75,000. And once again, this is all documented in my files, requiring a deposit of $500. And David's pretty well got this $500 deposit down. Now, in this case, we're going to talk about partnering 3 different people. The people being David G's Roth IRA, a 50% interest. He put up $250 through his Roth account. $175 from his partner's solo 401k, bought a 35% interest. And the partner put up $75 hard cash out of his own pocket and received a 15% interest in the transaction. Now, why did the partner do that instead of doing all of his solo 401k? It's simple. First, you can do it at the time of acquisition. And second, by doing this, he gets to put away 15% of the profit in his pocket currently, and he still gets to put 35% into his retirement plan for his future. So this is a good strategy for the folks out there that say, well, I don't want to put all the money back into my retirement account. I'd like to have some currently. Great. Simple. Partner with yourself on the transaction. Take 10 or 20% of the deal. Put up the money, and then you get 10 or 20% of the money or whatever percentage you want, and move forward. So that's a good way to get some current income, just as a little side note here. David G. and his partner once again submitted all the required documents. For the boring purposes, if you notice, I've made my points now, so I narrowed it down to submitted all the required documents to American IRA. I do appreciate the fact that sometimes it gets tedious going back and forth over the documentation thing, but it is the critical part of you telling us what to do. American IRA executed all documents on behalf of the retirement account, issued checks to the closing attorneys for the deposit. Okay? So far, very simple. The vesting was split 3 ways, as I told you, 50%, 35%, and 15% for the 3 different partners. And once again, the expenses must be split in relationship to the ownership percentage, 50, 35, and 15. And the profit and the expenses according to the actual percentages, that's critical, and that's why I keep emphasizing it in these partnership deals. And properly identifying the ownership percentage from the beginning, that's in the contract, will prevent the IRS from disqualifying the tax-exempt status of your IRA. So it's set up in advance. David G. once again did business with another investor who planned on reselling the property. The nice thing about this, if you'll notice, is you can call this wholesaling if you want. It fits that category because that's the category it is. But the transactions are so strong that the wholesaler or the investor that's buying this and reselling it to a retailer is happy to buy the property because there's a lot of, in quotes, meat left on the bone. If you're going to get involved with something, you got to make sure that A, you get a great deal so it's attractive to other investors and retail people, and B, you leave something there for the new investor so that if they plan on moving the property, that they have the upside to do their job and attract a retail buyer. So greed is not something that is beneficial in a scenario like this. It's more important to leave something for somebody else, make a nice profit, and when you do that, nobody cares how much you make. And David G. and his partner agreed to sell a property and entered into a contract to purchase for $175,000. Okay? Yes, he paid $75,000. He entered in a contract, and I don't know the exact time frame, but it was fairly quick. $175,000, and as always, and I say always, David G. used professionals. He has a team. They drafted the documents. They did the title search. They draft and oversee the closing, record the deeds, and they purchase title and fire insurance. Always. Trust me when I tell you this. Anytime you break the fundamental chain of rules, like dealing with getting all your proper documents, that is the one deal that will come back to haunt you in your investing career. I promise you this. And how do I know that? Take a guess. The investor brought $75,000 plus cost to close the $175,000 purchase. Okay? So David G. didn't put up any money. So he actually sold it to the investor. And that $75,000 was the down payment and the purchase price to the seller. So the seller gets cashed out at closing. That was step one. Step two, David G. and his partner agreed to hold a first mortgage of $100,000 of the purchase price. And yes, that is correct. $100,000 more than they paid. This was a no interest, no payment, short-term loan to the investor until the investor finished his sale for cash, at which time David G. and his partner will be paid in full. It took the investor several months to get it closed. It closes approximately December of 2007. David G.'s Roth received a check from the closing attorney for $49,750. And that's for a $250 investment. And of course, that's his half. The other half went to his partner, of which 35% went to the 401k. And keep in mind, of that 15% of the profit went to the gentleman in his pockets from current income, which is what he wanted. And you're trying to figure out, what did you miss? Nothing. David G. increased the value of his tax-free, never to be taxed Roth by $49,750 from an initial investment of $250. With proper education, which David did, patience, which is how he finds these deals, and dedication, which is follow-up. Anyone can do this. Anyone. I don't see anything in here that can't be duplicated and applied on a consistent basis, which is the other thing, that if you're looking at these transactions, these techniques are applied on a consistent basis, and that's why these deals are so successful. I want to go back through the key points. There were several notable techniques used in this deal: partnering with other self-directed retirement accounts, partnering with a solo 401k, which we talked about, partnering with a prohibited person. The prohibited person that you may be questioning, who is prohibited? Well, a prohibited person, remember, would be the gentleman who has a solo 401k. The solo 401k could not deal directly with the beneficiary, which is what in this case we're going to talk about the prohibited person. But at the time of acquisition, they were able to acquire the property, and he could take a personal interest in the property. So that's what I'm talking about. So it covered different type of accounts, partnering at the time of acquisition with what could be potentially in another environment, a prohibited transaction, and then owner financing. In the owner financing was from David G. and his partner's accounts to the new investor. Owner financing using no interest to facilitate the deal. And I put this in here because I wanted to make some commentary on mindset. This is not, as you may have noticed, there's a lot of IRA stuff, but there's a lot of just basic real estate investing in here, and this is my intention. If you're a beginning investor or a person from that's just been introduced to creative type of thought that has not yet done deals or has done deals in a very conventional way, okay, I hear this frequently because I say, let's start off with no interest to the offer to the seller. Well, they're not going to accept that. How do you know? Well, when you have a situation like this, this particular transaction was set up to facilitate the closing. If the deal is right, the interest doesn't matter. What I'm saying by that is, don't trip over the pennies to get to the dollars. Basically, it's this. I hear across the board, and I'm not throwing out anything as it relates to hard money lending that is promoting it one way or the other, because I don't recommend products. But let's talk about private party lending, better known as hard money lending. And the definition of hard money lending is anything that's not purchased money. You may not know that. So whether it's a private party loan or, in quotes, a hard money loan, it's in fact hard money. In this case, the financing was used merely for the investor to hold the property until he resold it buyer for cash. Think of it as like a long-term holding. But the other mindset is, well, the hard money lender wants 13% in X number of dollars for costs up front. I'm not going to pay 13% when I can get it at the bank at 5. Well, here's the rub. You can't get it at the bank for 5, number one. And number two, the terms, conditions, and speed are what makes the hard money attractive. And third, in most cases, when you're using that type of money, it's going to be a short-term deal anyway. It's a cost of doing business. And where else are you going to get the money? And you have to pay a partner even more money. So focus on the deal. Build your cost in either interest or no interest, depending on the way you're going to do it. And you don't need to charge interest like David G. here. He didn't need to charge interest for 7 months. Would anybody reject a profit on a property of $100,000 and giving a guy 7 months worth of free interest, or 5 months, or whatever it took to close it? I submit to you that I don't think I'm going to get too many volunteers here that are going to say they would not do that. So just think about it like that. And the same thing with the hard money. If you have a situation where you're going to need financing, it's all part of doing business. You build the cost of the money into the deal. And when the deal's good enough, it's evident right there. Okay? So that's some fundamentals. The reason the Roth IRA will never be taxed. This account of David's has now been established for more than 5 years, and I realize it includes us, but previous to that, a Roth that he had are not excluded. So the Roth IRA, once you establish it, it's 5 years from the time you establish the original Roth. So you may have a Roth now with a securities firm, and you decide you want to move it over to a self-directed provider such as American IRA, and we hope that you do. Well, that 5 years is already ticking. If you open an account today and you've never had one, the 5 years starts from the time you opened it. So it's a 5-year time frame to become tax-free. That's part one. Part two is you must reach 59 and a half. Okay? Those are the two considerations. So to be clear, is if you are currently 58 years old, a mere child, I might add, then you cannot have a fully tax-free account until you're 63. That's the 5 years and 59 and a half. David G. will not be taking any distributions before he's 59 and a half, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's the other consideration, having it absolutely tax-free. And here's a little tidbit of information that you can just put away in the back of your mind. I wanted to point this out because it's one of the nice or features about a Roth. I don't know if it's nice because it does have its downside, which we're going to discuss. You can always withdraw the cash contributions from a Roth IRA without paying any taxes because the taxes were paid prior to you depositing the money into a Roth IRA. Let me rephrase. If you had $5,000 a year, you put it away for 4 consecutive years, you'd have $20,000 in the account. You may have made $50,000 on that $20,000. You can withdraw the $20,000 without any penalties or taxes because you've already paid the taxes. So if you have an emergency, that money would be there. The profit, however, is subject to the rules I just laid out to you, 5 years and 59 and a half. Now, David G's contributions, as we know, were 12.8 to his Roth IRA, and the withdrawal without any tax consequences anytime he chooses. However, when you think about using this strategy, you also have to, don't just consider, well, gosh, I can get this money tax-free and I could use it for a new Ferrari. Maybe it's, old Ferrari, but nevertheless a Ferrari. However, keep in mind that David G decides to do this, he will miss the tax-free compounding for the rest of the Roth IRA's existence. And it would take about 3 years in David G's situation to replenish those through regular contributions, and they would not be compounding tax-free. So there is a consequence to taking the money out. The tax situation is minimal. I would say that if you didn't have a absolute near-death reason to take out the money, then I would say that you may want to consider not doing it and just working around whatever the needs are. Remember, a wise investor always weighs their options and risks when deciding whether to accept a deal. In this case, think about the deal. David G. had nothing to lose by accepting this offer. The investor paid $75,000 cash to close. That allowed David G. and his partner to purchase the property. And they didn't really purchase the property. They had it under contract, so it went directly to the investor through once again, a modified double closing. I'm not going to get into double closings. We'll get to that in the advanced section. If the investor did not pay off the first mortgage held by David G. and his partner, then David G. and his partner would own a free and clear property. So once again, my theory is that there's no such thing as risk-free investing, but diligence will, in fact, put the odds in your favor. I would say in this case, what would you determine the risk to be in this case? I'll leave that to you to answer that question.